Normally, on Sundays in the summer, we reflect on the scriptures, but on the anniversary of my grandmother's death, I've been invited to talk a little bit about her as well. In today's readings, we've heard about Martha and Mary, but in this reflection, I'm going to add another Mar name to focus on, Marjorie, or as I called her, Grandma. Martha was the kind of person who could leave nothing undone, who always had one more thing to do and was always worried about too many things. Mary was her opposite. She knew when to take the time to sit, to listen, to visit, and learn, both spiritually and personally. Marjorie was in the middle. She was the balance. We used to joke that we put on her tombstone, she died doing one more thing. She was constantly in motion, constantly preparing, but she also knew when to take a step back and enjoy company. Anytime family or friends were over, she would make sure to spend time catching up with them and enjoying them, even though that usually meant doing dishes until late in the night after everyone left. I think most people happen to be more like Marjorie, somewhere between the ends of Martha and Mary. Whether you knew her for 1 minute or an entire lifetime, Marjorie was the kind of woman you could never forget. She made her impact everywhere she went, and everyone who I have talked to had an inspiring, uplifting story about her. I'm sure all of you have people in your lives, living or dead, who inspired you like that as well. My grandmother was remarkable in many ways, and one thing was that she always showed up. She was there for her children, grandchildren, extended family, friends, piano students, her church, everyone. It didn't matter how long you knew her or in what capacity, she showed up. For me, she showed up in more ways than I can count. One memorable one was in high school. I was sick and I had to miss a band concert. Just because I had to miss it didn't mean she had to. She still went to that concert to support me and my band, which was something pretty spectacular considering I wasn't even there. But she didn't just show up for me. She showed up for everything and everyone, including this place. Since she started coming to this church in 2011, she seldom missed a Sunday. Even during the pandemic, she adjusted to Zoom church and was ready every Sunday with her pearl earrings and lipstick by 10 a.m. Attending church was very important to her. In her later years, it was often her only excursion from the house, and it was one that she cherished. She had a deep faith that was to be admired, and she loved to share it with people and talk about it with people. As I was putting this together, I was talking with a family friend, and she said that she had some of the best conversations with my grandmother about religion and spirituality, and that she would often go to my grandmother when she wanted another's reflection on some readings or things happening within the church. My grandmother was so knowledgeable about the scripture, yet every Sunday she managed to get something out of the readings and sermons. In every church she was a part of, she became a vital part of it. She didn't just show up spiritually here, but also physically. All of you knew my grandmother in her later years, but she still showed up if anyone needed anything. She enjoyed many conversations with you all at coffee hours and over the phones, and during the pandemic was a regular at the Zoom coffee hours. She was as active as she could have been in the parish life, and many of you have told me over the last few years how your lives have been enriched by knowing her. She took the time before every meal to say grace, to take a moment, to be grateful for food, friends, and faith that we had. It didn't matter how busy she was or what she had going on or even who was at the table, she always took a minute for grace. Everyone who came to her table, whether they said grace at home or not, knew that she said it and was a part of it. One of her favorites was simple, to the point, but meaningful. And it went, for food in a world where many walk in hunger, for friends in a world where many walk alone, for faith in a world where many walk in fear. We praise your name, O Lord. That table where she said grace was the centerpiece of her kitchen. My grandmother was constantly working in that kitchen, whether it was cooking, baking, or cleaning. She spent a lot of time there, but she also loved to visit and talk with people. She would invite people over to have a drink, and they would sit at her table and connect, as she would say, with her as she worked. As a kid, we would all play Yahtzee games at that table, and she would take her turns in between prepping and cooking dinner. That very same kitchen table now resides at my uncle's house. As I mentioned earlier, Marjorie was somewhere in between Martha and Mary. One of the ways this was most apparent was at holidays. We would host Thanksgiving every year, and it was a production. We would spend the entire night before doing the prep work, including things like setting table, getting linens out, baking pies, and general setup. This was also the next day could be enjoyed with family. By getting as much prepared as she did the night before, she was able to relax and enjoy every time with family, starting with the parade at 9 a.m. with me in the morning. My grandmother knew the importance of being present. She would wait to do the dishes until after everyone had left, so she had taken advantage of all the time she had with them. This usually meant she would stay up late to clean everything. And then the following day would be for polishing the silver, putting away the dishes, folding the laundry, and ironing all of the linens. A one-day holiday would become a 3-day venture for her, but I'd yet to meet a person who didn't have an enlightening conversation with my grandmother while at a family holiday. To my grandmother, dishes could wait, people couldn't, but rest assured the dishes did get done. Another example is at Christmas. As most of you know, Christmas time can be a very busy time of year. There's a lot of rushing around and a lot of preparing. My grandmother did a lot of that. There was the tree decorating, house decorating, cookie baking, a lot of cookie baking, bread baking, and meal prepping, amongst other things. However, every year without fail, she would be present both spiritually and for family. On Christmas Eve, she started the tradition with our family to listen to lessons and carols live from King's College, Cambridge in England at 10 a.m. It didn't matter that that day was one of our busiest of the years or that there was baking to be done and tables to be set. We would all gather around the radio with the hymnal and light the candles in the Advent wreath and let the music and readings guide us. It was such a nice way to just slow down and enjoy the spirituality and joy of Christmas. Similarly, she would always pause everything she was doing at the end of the Messiah. It didn't matter who she was talking to or what she was working on. She would stop and listen to Worthy is the Lamb and the Great Amen. She found such peace, joy, and reflection in that piece of music, and she's never made it through the Great Amen without shedding a tear. So today we heard about Martha, who was constantly preparing and worrying, Mary, who saw value in taking a minute to enjoy what was going on around her, and Marjorie, who was the balance. In this crazy world where so many things feel uncertain, it's easy to take either the Martha approach or the Mary approach, but I think the Marjorie approach is just as valuable. My grandfather had a prayer that he would often say at funerals about how life is eternal, love is immortal, and death is only a horizon. I never knew my grandfather, so my exposure to that prayer and to my grandfather was from my grandmother and my mother, but also from a Carly Simon song. Part of the chorus goes, life is eternal and love is immortal and death is only a horizon. Life is eternal as we move into the light and the horizon is nothing save the limit of our sight. I'd like to think that it's true that even though we can't be here anymore and it's been a full year without her physical presence, it doesn't mean that she hasn't shown up for all of us. She's just beyond the horizon.